Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? It's Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com along with Andrew Bone. Another commitment is in for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Today, William Anderson has pulled the trigger, the newest member of the Crimson Tide. I'm here with Andrew Bone. Break it down, Bone. How big is this commitment to the class of 2020?
Well, it's a big commitment. It's a commitment that people have been expecting for a while for Alabama. He actually told us about a week ago that he was going to commit on Tuesday of last week, and he kind of set it up. He kept things quiet, and then Georgia Tech talked him into coming in for an official visit. Just come visit them one more time. They wanted to get him on campus, spend some time with him, but kind of knew that Alabama was in the driver's seat there, that he had basically already, told the coaching staff that he was coming. So, it was kind of funny last week when Quandarius Robinson committed. A lot of people were thinking, oh, well, that must mean that William Anderson doesn't have a spot. Well, they didn't know that he was really kind of committed already to Alabama. Alabama was kind of just waiting to see what happened this weekend, making sure that he was still kind of on board. And he came out today and said that he was 100% committed to Alabama. And I think Alabama coaching staff is pretty excited about their latest commitment here.
Justin William Anderson commits to the Alabama Crimson Tide. I'm here with Andrew Bone. Andrew, let's talk about what type of player he is. 6'4", 235 pounds, ranked as the number 18th player overall in the state of Georgia. Give us a little bit of background on his playing style and why Alabama is so happy to have him on board.
Well, he plays with his hand in the dirt at the high school level, and he plays defensive end. I could see him potentially grow into a defensive end at the college level. I mean, he's definitely going to be a pass rusher. There's no doubt about that. He had 18 sacks as a junior last year, so definitely a guy who likes to get after the quarterback and get in the backfield, can put pressure on the quarterback. So I certainly think that he's going to fill that role once he gets to Tuscaloosa, and he's got a really close relationship with Alabama DB commitment Brian Branch. They're close friends. They've taken some visits together, and Brian Branch, I think, was a big part of, the recruiting effort in getting William Anderson on board. But everybody looks at Alabama's class right now, and they just keep seeing these, outside linebacker or even just linebackers commit overall. Everyone just thinks that, oh, wow, Alabama's taken so many linebackers in this class, and it's a little bit different than what you may think. I mean, you look at the class right now, and obviously you've got some really good in-state linebacker commitments, and probably I guess you could say the top three linebackers in the state of Alabama: Quandarius Robinson, Demoy Kennedy, and Jackson Bratton. Well, all those guys are kind of recruited to play different positions. Quandarius is more of a outside backer. He can play that Will or Sam position. You got Demoy Kennedy, who's a probably more of an inside linebacker type guy. He's only about he's 6'2", about 205 pounds right now, but Alabama kind of sees him growing into that inside linebacker role in the future, sort of like when Dylan Moses got to campus. We compared Demoy Kennedy to Dylan Moses last week. It's just an incredible athlete. May start out at outside, but then year or two into the program, may get will likely move into that inside linebacker role. And then you've got Jackson Bratton out of Muscle Shoals, 6'3", 225 pounds. Looking more like he'll play inside linebacker. But you look at the rest of the list. Chris Brazel, big time player, 5-star, 6'3", 225 pounds. Edge rusher, outside linebacker. He can do a lot of different things. I'm sure Alabama will probably move him around and try to get him in the best position that they can. You have the superstar linebacker Drew Sanders out of Denton, Texas. I mean, just a big time player that you can move him all over the field as well. I think he can play any linebacker spot. So I think Alabama, very excited about him, very in love. But William Anderson just adds to that just incredible defensive class that Alabama has thus far, especially at, the linebacker position. And, like I said, people keep questioning why is Alabama taking so many linebackers? Well, it's kind of like how it was last year on the defensive front. I mean, Alabama needed to sign 6 defensive linemen. There was no doubt about that last year. They needed to get 6. And they would have taken 7 if there was, if the right guy wanted to commit. They would have taken 7 defensive linemen last year. It's kind of like how often, it was just because it was the biggest position of need. Biggest position of need this year, linebacker, inside and outside. And I think Alabama's doing a tremendous job. So really wouldn't worry too much about the numbers, especially at linebacker, because it's a very much needed position. Alabama's going to lose a lot of very good players inside and outside after this fall. So it's a big position of needing, getting some pass rushers, guys that can get after the quarterback. Very important. And this is I said this a couple of weeks ago that I feel like in terms of pass rushers at the outside linebacker position, I feel like this is probably one of the deepest years that we've seen it overall, and Alabama's been able to really capitalize on that and get some really good football players.
We're here with Andrew Bone. We're talking about William Anderson, who just committed to the Alabama Crimson Tide, 6'4", 235 pounds. To read more about Anderson, going over to BamaInsider.com to get the complete scoop, all the nuggets back at BamaInsider.com. Bone, while I have you on, I wanted to talk to you about a couple more linebackers. You still have Noah Sewell, who just talked about his recent trip to Alabama. You can read that on BamaInsider.com. And then Philip Webb. And then also here next week, we'll get to see Justin Flo at the Rivals Challenge. Can you touch on some of the other linebackers that are key targets for the Crimson Tide?
Yeah, well, I still think that there's some guys that are out there that they really want, that they would, love to take in this class, and definitely, some high-ranking guys like Justin Flo, who's supposedly coming in to Tuscaloosa this weekend for an unofficial visit for the cookout, and then we'll be at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge in Atlanta next week. Noah Sewell, as you mentioned, had just gotten back from his trip to Tuscaloosa. He made a few other stops, went to Clemson, went to Georgia. I think Alabama's probably a little bit behind there. I think he'll stay out on the West Coast. I think Oregon's in great position with him, with his brother Panay attending school there and playing on the football team. I think Oregon probably has the best shot with him. We'll see how things go with Flo this weekend, and he's got an official visit set for September the 20th to come back to Tuscaloosa. Probably still a long shot, but Alabama's still heavily recruiting him, and they'd love to get very much involved there. They were probably at the top of his list last summer after he made the visit. A lot had to do with his relationship with Tosh Lapoy, and Tosh is now gone, so he's having to kind of rebuild those relationships. But if he can come back to Tuscaloosa, be blown away again, like he was on that first trip, then you never know what may happen. There's still some other kids that are out there. You mentioned Philip Webb out of Georgia, outside linebacker, jack linebacker, can play either or. We originally thought he was being recruited as an inside backer, and that's kind of the position that Alabama saw him at. But then he came to Alabama's camp last week, worked out, and Alabama really likes him more as a jack linebacker. Now, with the addition of William Anderson today, it's going to be interesting to kind of see how things go moving forward in terms of guys that they still heavily pursue, that they heavily feel like they can, they would definitely still land. All those guys that I've mentioned, Philip Webb, Justin Flo, Noah Sewell, I mean, those are all guys that they have been heavily recruiting for a long time. And, you still have Savell Smalls out there, who's an outside linebacker, defensive end, that is showing a little bit of interest in Alabama. Now, I think Alabama's on the outside for him, but what if he makes it to campus on a visit, comes back for an official visit, and says, "Hey, I want to go to Alabama too." It'll be interesting to see kind of what happens there. But Alabama is sitting in an amazing position right now with all these linebacker commitments that are on board, and most of them seem very solid with their commitments. Quandarius Robinson last week, when Alabama, picked up his commitment, I think Nick Saban basically told him, he said, "Hey, we don't want you taking any more visits. We want you to kind of completely shut things down and not do anything." And that's kind of what he's been doing. So, DeMoy Kennedy said the same thing. He said, "I'm not taking any more visits." So, I think that's going to be the biggest thing with Alabama is, if you're going to be committed here, especially at the linebacker position, we don't want you to take commitments. That's what they're telling kids. We don't want you to take take visits. And we're starting to see these kids shut it down. Drew Sanders isn't visiting anywhere. DeMoy Kennedy, Quandarius Robinson. Will any of these other guys take any other visits? Jackson Bratton has been taking some visits, but a lot of people on our message board and probably elsewhere say, well, he must be taking visits for a reason. And he must be, being asked to leave the class or go somewhere else. That's just not true. People just create this false narrative in their head when other kids commit at the position that, somebody else must be being forced. That's not necessarily the case at all. And, kind of makes me upset a little bit when I see stuff like that, especially when they're talking about really good players in the class being forced out. It's just not the case. But Alabama, really wants to keep somebody like Jackson Bratton or DeRicky Wright. Even though, we're still trying to hammer this point across that DeRicky Wright not really being recruited as a linebacker, being recruited more as an athlete or tight end. I mean, that's kind of the positions that they're recruited, looking at him more so at this time as an athlete or tight end, not outside linebacker or inside linebacker. So I just think overall Alabama's linebacker class is, very, very good, probably the best that it's been in the tenure of Nick Saban at Alabama, and it could get even better.
For more Alabama Crimson Tide recruiting nuggets, to get the full scoop on William Anderson, simply go to BamaInsider.com to get that free 30-day trial to get the premium nuggets behind the paywall. The checkout code is simple, Roll Tide. For everything else from Andrew Bone, follow BamaInsider.com. We'll catch you guys next time. Keep up at BamaInsider.com.